So Steph wanted me to go into some of the pruning basics. A lot of people ask how to prune fruit trees, when to prune fruit trees, what are the right pruning techniques. And so I'm going to cover some of the basics. I'm going to forget some stuff, but here you go. Here's a lot of it. So when you have a tree, you've either got a young tree or an old tree. Young trees, your philosophy is kind of shaping the tree and getting it to have the framework that you want going into its mature years. When you have a mature tree, sometimes you inherit a tree like I did with this one. This is an apple tree, and this tree was really, really overgrown. And so we had to do some heavy prune back and bring it down. I have a philosophy on fruit tree height. I'm not a ladder guy. I don't like to be on ladders, and I think you live longer the fewer days that you spend on a ladder. And so my philosophy on height is if I can reach it with my fingertips, it's perfect. I want to be out here 3 times a year. I want to be out here pruning, thinning, and picking. And if I can do all those 3 tasks every year off of a ladder, that's a really good thing. It's gonna elongate my life. So that's kind of why you can see these fruit trees that are designed to be a little shorter. This one is an old mature apple tree that I've had to kind of whip into shape, and because of that, because of the heavy pruning that I have to do on it every year, in part it shoots up with a lot of water shoots, and so all of these verticals for the most part are going to come out of it. So every place where you see these vertical just single branch shoot ups, those are all pretty much going to come out. When you begin pruning a tree, let's say that you have the shape that you want in your mind. You have basically 3 things that you start looking for. Let's call it the 3 Ds of pruning. These aren't from me. These are more from the USU Extension Office and a lot of online information. But a way I remember it is simple. 3 Ds. You have first the dead branches that you're going to take out. This tree doesn't really have hardly any dead branches. So as I come across dead branches, you'll recognize them just because they're brittle. These ones are not brittle at all, but they'll be brittle. They'll be a little bit of a different color, a little more brown, and they're dead. Sometimes they'll be missing all of their bark and just blatantly obvious that it's dead. So first off, dead. Second, diseased. Diseased, if you see little pores on the side of it, oozing or whatever, you might have a borer, you might have some kind of fungus or bacteria, and you want to get rid of any of the diseased branches, so cut those all out. And then the last thing, the last D on the 3 Ds is dumb. Dumb is the most difficult of the 3 Ds, and that is crossing branches. Crossing branches are going to be a point where it's going to introduce stress into the tree. As these rub together, it'll damage the bark and be a point of ingress for bacteria or fungus or whatever. It's going to weaken the branch. It's just bad practice. So you want to get rid of all the crossing limbs. You want to get rid of bad angles. Here you can see a lot of bad angles that have developed. These are downward facing. They're not going to bear fruit well, and so all of these got to come out. This one's actually a dead one, so, or mostly dead. You can see when you break it, no green. So there is a few dead ones, I guess. So downward facing branches, weak angles, and then you're going to want to get rid of stuff that goes back into the center of the tree, because we're trying to allow sunlight to enter the canopy. As the sunlight enters the canopy, it's going to allow all these leaves that are down in here. If I leave some of this, which I won't leave this right here, but let's say this little guy right here, he's a great fruiting spur, and you can see that he's going to have fruit all along here. I'm going to have to thin this heavily. Because of the blossoms right here, these are the buds that are going to swell into blossoms. So as the year goes on, they'll get more obvious because they'll be kind of fuzzy, but you can see these are fruiting blossoms right here. So if I have this fruiting spur right down in here, and I don't take out some of these branches up here, this is never going to see the sun. These leaves on here are never going to be able to photosynthesize and give energy to the tree. And the fruit's never going to be able to see any sunlight either, which typically contributes to fruit that's not as sweet. So you want to allow sunlight into your canopy. and branches that go back towards the center of your tree are just kind of inhibiting that sunlight. And so we're going to eliminate a lot of these branches in here, obviously all the water shoots, and you'll see towards the end of the video after I go through and prune it all how much we've opened it up. So as far as when to prune, apple trees, they have, I think, what's called cool days or cold days, or maybe it's hours, but regardless, they have a set amount of time that they're going to stay dormant through your cold period of year, time of year. So they're going to stay dormant until they reach their desired kind of internal clock of cold days, and then all of a sudden they're going to come out of dormancy and blossom and begin to set fruit and leaves. So apple trees, you want to prune them in the cold months. We can prune in January, you can prune in February. It's not going to hurt the tree because it's not going to spur it to come out of dormancy like some of your stone fruit fruit trees. If you start pruning those too early, you can kind of tell them, hey, it's time to come out of dormancy, and they might start to set buds, and you get a hard frost and you lose some of your fruit, or maybe all of your fruit. Apple trees, though, you don't have an issue with that because they have an internal clock. It's going to tell them, all right, it's been enough cold days. We're going to start to come out of dormancy, and so you don't have an issue with frost damage with apple trees. So we have two types of cuts in pruning. You have either what's called a heading cut or a thinning cut. So a heading cut would be, for example, this branch comes out kind of where I like it. I want to have it set fruit right here, but maybe I don't want it to continue on a upward angle like this branch shoots upward. So I can decide, okay, right here I like this little bud right here. So I'm going to leave that bud and I'm going to take it right above that bud to encourage the continued growth in the next growth phase to come out this direction. So that's called a heading cut. Another type of pruning cut is called a thinning cut. The thinning cuts are, you can think of all of these water shoots as thinning cuts. We're taking it right down to the collar, and I'll show you one close up. Let's see one close up. I've decided to leave this one this year. So let's move over to here and take out this one. So this one, well, technically this one's, you can kind of see how this is actually a heading cut. So I'm not going to call this a thinning cut because it's really not. It's a heading cut. This is the main leader, and I'm heading it off and choosing this one to be the leader off of there. Okay, so take a look in here, Steph. This is a true thinning cut. So you have this main branch coming out here, and this one's just going to crowd up this area, probably never receive any sunlight. So we're going to take it off right here. Take it off. That's a thinning cut. All these water shoots, these are all thinning cuts. And you notice when we cut, we're cutting really nice and close to the main part right here. But what we're leaving is that little tiny collar. This is a perfect example of it. You can see as it swells where it reaches this main branch, it swells and then it gets skinny, a little bit skinnier, and we've taken it off right where it goes from the swell back to skinny. We take that off. Here's another one that we can look at close up right here. So if you look right here, we have a collar that comes in, and the collar tapers off right about right there. So right at that, where the swelling ends, that's where we want to make our cut and take that off. That's a thinning cut right there. Okay, so we're gonna go on. More thinning cuts here. These are downward facing branches. They fall under the dumb category. This one is just kind of a bad angle. Comes straight off and right off the bottom of this. Technically, when a tree does this, they call this a stub cut. So if I were trying to encourage these branches to come out of here, when this branch originally, when this branch came out here, and I wanted to encourage this type of growth, I could have cut it right here, and it did just that. So this is called a stub cut. We're not going to use those though, but this is what the end result after you do an intentional stub cut is you have these branches coming out here. So, but I don't want those. I don't like the angle, and I don't like where they're going. So I'll continue pruning this tree. Again, we're bringing it all down to a reachable height. I don't want these two fruit trees to really touch each other. We're getting a little bit of space so that when this sets fruit in here, in between these branches. So for example, right here, if all three of these were to set fruit the apples would be way too close together because the apples are going to be about the size of my fist, and we want to have space and airflow in between the fruit. So we can't have all of these branches, so we're going to do a little thinning cut right there and take this one out, and a thinning cut right here and take this guy out. So we'll work around the tree and get rid of all the problem branches and get the shape that we want, and then we'll come back in several months and come back and do the thinning. When we do the thinning, sometimes you're just pulling fruit, but occasionally you're doing just a little bit of pruning there because maybe you have some branches that you neglected to take out when you were pruning early on in the year, and it's just easier just to take those out entirely. So I'll get to this one and then we'll come back and look at it.
That is sad.
Well, it's not just because of this. Look at the whole angle of the branch.
Oh, this huge one's going out.
So it's time for this guy to come out because this other branch is doing good and growing out into this space.
Oh, that's
and
true.
I can train it to come in here and fill this. And this one's coming over into this space. But also we have a peach tree here. This one got ravaged by deer, so we're trying to nurse it back to life. A smarter person would just start over, dig it out and put a different tree in. But I'm gonna take this one out entirely, probably back to here. Right there. So, heading cut.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Any last words?
So it's done. It's absolutely perfect and it couldn't be pruned any more perfectly. And if you believe that that's true, then I have a multi-level marketing scheme that you're gonna love. But in reality, pruning a tree is like painting a picture. You do it the way you want it, and there's no such thing as perfect. You can prune it a little heavier, a little less, depending on your end goal. I like to prune mine usually pretty heavy. I feel like I went a little more moderate this time. But the more modest you prune, a lot of the time you just end up having to thin that much more. So it's a trade-off. I want to show you some weird things that I did in here. So if you notice where I'm standing right here is a pretty big open space. And you'll also notice, if you look right here, this old mature tree.
Oh, that's sad.
Has some sad bark damage. So right here, this is kind of a common thing that you can do when you're pruning is, okay, obviously I don't want to keep both of these because this is kind of like parallel limbs. They're not on great angles, but where this has damage and this doesn't, the rest of this tree looks really healthy and strong. I'm going to encourage one of these guys to become the new main branch out here. So whether it comes out somewhere lower here, which would probably be ideal, or whether it comes off of this or this is where I've decided to take the heading cuts on these to encourage these branches to come out here and here. And whoever looks like the stronger, healthier one next year, I'll take the other one out. So that's what's going on here. Same principle here. I've left this little guy to try and encourage this one to come off. If this does really well and this does really well, then in time, eventually we'll take probably this branch out because this is never going to heal and will likely just get a little bit worse every year. This is the same exact story. All of these guys I've left just to see what develops. I pruned them down pretty heavy, but this guy has a little shoot coming off this way. Same with this. So if one of these turns out to look really great in a year or two, then I'll take the other one out. Same principle here. The reason this happened is just because this tree, when I inherited it, it had a really ugly form and really overgrown, terrible shape. It was totally barren in the middle and then really tall out on the sides. It shot up in the middle here, so I had to take this out. Anyway, I'm happy with where it's at now, and we typically get some really excellent golden delicious apples off of this every year. They can be really big and awesome. On the topic of tools, the tools that I use, and it really depends how many times you want to buy pruners. But if you want to only buy them once and maybe replace the blade, then go with the Felco F2. These are available on Amazon. Sometimes your local gardeners will carry them, but they're expensive. They might be 3 times the price of a Fisker or a Corona, but they're also 3 times the quality. I use the Corona sheath because it fits the Felco F2s a little bit better. These are Felcos as well, and so in the lopper, I like that a lot. And then this little folding saw is a Silky F180, and super sharp saw and does quick work of your little bit larger limbs. But that's about it for this golden delicious apple.
Few branches to clean up now.
Yeah, you can run those through the chipper and put it right back on the ground.
Okay,
So hopefully that was helpful. Steph wanted this video made, says people have questions, so hopefully I covered most of the stuff. And
you've become the pruning expert, so I highly trust what you have to say. Especially in our landscape business too. He does all over, so
yeah, I don't know, but
he loves
anyway.
pruning fruit trees. If you guys want to see a pruning of a peach tree, let us know, because that's what's next. It's kind of pruning season, so we've got to prune our semi-trailing blackberries over there. We're going to build a trellis. We've got to start pruning roses. So much pruning to do. He'll finish this one. But these trees are really old. How old do you think these are?
These may be 40 or 50 years old.
And they just keep going. And so it's amazing how trees can kind of recover from heavy pruning. They're really tough and resilient when they're this old, and they just start to form new branches, so you can just keep it going. It's pretty awesome. And golden delicious, like you said, are the best, and they make the best apple pie. Thank you for doing this video. I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good day. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye.